Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People Story. I've always been a gearhead at heart. Ever since I was a little kid, I loved tinkering with engines, taking apart old radios, you name it. My dad was the one who first got me hooked on cars. We'd spend weekends in the garage together, tuning up his '67 Ford Mustang. The smell of motor oil and sound of wrenches turning bolts brings back so many great memories. So, when I bought my first house in a quaint coastal town, the first thing I did was turn the garage into my own personal workshop. And my pride and joy that lived there? My 1970 Dodge Charger? I had found it abandoned in a junkyard, rusting away, but I could see the potential underneath all that wear and tear. For 3 years, I lovingly restored that Charger to its former glory, piece by piece, polishing each chrome detail, tuning the V8 engine to purr, repairing the interior leather seats. That car was my baby. Just looking at its slick orange paint job put a smile on my face. I'll admit, I took every chance I could to tinker with my Charger. After work, I'd pop open the hood to tweak the carburetor, or on weekends spend hours buffing out scratches in the paint. It was my passion project. I'd roll the Charger out of the garage and work on it right there in my driveway. That is, until the homeowners association stuck their noses where they didn't belong. It started with a sternly worded letter in my mailbox. Apparently, my Dodge Charger was in direct violation of the community standards. I was ordered to cease and desist working on my car in the driveway immediately or face consequences. Confused, I went to the next homeowners association's meeting to try and straighten things out. That's when I met Barbara, the head of the board. Right away, I could tell she was going to be trouble. She had that pinched look on her face like she was smelling something foul. "That eyesore of yours does not fit the aesthetic of our coastal cottage community," she sneered at me. "We will not have such blatant disrespect for the rules." No matter how much I tried to explain my passion for classic cars, Barbara wouldn't budge. "The Charger must go," she declared. "It's an inappropriate display not aligned with our vision." I refused to stop working on my dream car just to appease some uptight lady on a power trip. A week later, I was out washing the Charger when a tow truck hauled up. Two men hooked my car and started dragging it away while I shouted at them to stop. When I called the impound lot, they told me the homeowners associations had authorized the tow, and I would need to pay $500 in fines and fees to get my Charger back. $500, just for enjoying my hobby in my own driveway. I managed to scrape together the cash, but it turned out to be just the beginning. The homeowners association started sending the tow truck every single day. Didn't matter if I was just checking the oil or rotating the tires. If that Charger was out of the garage, away it went. The fees kept piling up, and soon it was more than I could afford. I tried lodging complaints and appealing to the homeowners association's board, but they denied every request. I was at my wit's end watching my bank account drain just so I could keep getting back what was rightfully mine. It was time to take real action. I gathered every tow receipt, every letter of violation, and marched straight to City Hall. After reviewing the evidence, the mayor agreed that the homeowners associations had wildly overstepped their bounds. Not only did they not have cause to have my car towed, but doing it daily was harassment, plain and simple. Barbara blew a gasket when she got called into the mayor's office. "That rusted behemoth is ruining our neighborhood," she yelled. "I won't have this city telling me how to keep the peace in my own community." But the mayor was done playing nice. She revoked the homeowners association's authorization to order any more tows of my Charger. "If we receive one more complaint about your abuse of power, your entire board will be disbanded," the mayor warned. Barbara had no choice but to back down. These days, I make a point to spend a few hours every weekend working on the Charger in full view. As I buff each gleaming fender, I can almost feel Barbara's eyes glaring daggers from down the block. But my classic muscle car and I aren't going anywhere. I fought too hard to get back the freedom to enjoy my hobby on my own property. And if the homeowners associations wants to complain about my Charger not fitting their uppity vision, well, that's just too damn bad. The next one is a pro-revenge story. I was pushing 40, and I'd learned a lot of lessons in more than 10 years of legal practice. But one of the most important lessons I learned was from an older lawyer that I worked for as a summer student after the second year of law school. A lawyer has 3 duties, he told me. First to himself, second to the court, and last the client. Always make sure you come first and the client comes last. The reason? Because clients will take advantage of you. he said. They'll throw you under the bus without thinking twice. I should have stayed with this lawyer, but being young and an idiot, I had to go work downtown, and I'm still downtown now. But fortunately for me, I remembered this lesson, and it came in handy many years later when a client really did try to throw me under the bus. My client was this mid-sized company that did this and that and owned things here and there, not big enough to be listed, but it did have a pretty sizable real estate portfolio, and one day a building they owned burned to the ground. The company wanted to collect on the insurance, so they told Frank, a veteran salaryman, to deal with it. Frank was close to 60 and thought he knew what he was doing. He didn't need me to help him with the insurance claim, he told me. He had everything under control. Besides, lawyers are expensive. Some guys really get off on not paying legal fees, and Frank was one of those guys who gloated over every penny that he managed not to pay to the lawyers. I dealt with Frank a lot, and he was always nickel and diming me. The insurer is going to give you trouble, I told Frank. It was only by luck that I even knew about the fire and the loss because Frank had not asked for my help. He'd just let it slip one day, and since then I'd kept on top of him, trying to get him to smarten up. I'd had to fight to get him to send me the proof of loss form to make sure he hadn't messed that up. Frank messed up a lot, and I wondered sometimes how he had a job. But the proof of loss was okay, at least, so that was one less thing to worry about. You don't know that, he said. I could tell he just wanted to get me off the phone. I'm paid to know when insurers are trying to take advantage of my clients, I said, and the insurer is going to take advantage of you. They've been stringing you along for ages with requests and questions and paperwork, but they aren't going to pay you, not unless you sue them. But Frank said he knew what he was doing, that it was all under control, and besides, he got along with the adjuster so great. The limitation period expires in 2 weeks, I said, and once that 2 weeks pass, it will be too late to sue. The moment that limitation period expires, they will stop taking your calls. You'll get a final email saying, sorry, you're out of time, and that will be that. Don't leave this until the last minute. Let me sue right now, and you'll have the money in no time. Frank was like, sure, fine, whatever, don't bother me, I got this blah blah blah, and he got off the phone as soon as he could. I sent him the usual email with clear warnings and recommendations, which he ignored. I sent the email again, and then again as the limitation period approached, and again a couple of days before the deadline. I'm going to be at trial and you won't be able to reach me, my final email said, but you have to sue. You have other firms on your list, so pick one and sue. He didn't bother to reply, and I went off to do my trial. The trial lasted a couple of weeks, and no email from Frank. Then a month passed, and another month, still no email. I figured he must have sorted things out. Maybe Frank was right after all, I said to myself, and then my phone rang. It was Frank. Remember that fire insurance thing we spoke about? We'd only spoken about it like a dozen times. I figured he was calling up to gloat, so I cut to the chase. So they paid out. That's great, Frank. You were right. He asked me what I was talking about, and could he see a copy of the claim? What claim? I said. The claim against the insurer. You know, that claim. Does that mean the insurer didn't pay? I said. He hung up on me, and then a few minutes later my computer dinged, and there was Frank's email talking about how we spoke, and he told me to sue, and he was worried when I hadn't sent him a copy of the claim, so he was following up to get a copy of the claim. I emailed him back. I take it that the insurer didn't pay you, just like I told you they wouldn't, and now that the limitation period is expired, they told you to jump in the lake, leaving you with a loss in the millions. Is that it? I'd made a mistake by not going over Frank's head when he wouldn't listen to me, but if I'd gone over Frank's head, I never would have received another file from him, so I didn't. But that was then, and this was now, so I CC'd Frank's boss and his boss's boss, plus I CC'd Bill, the client's in-house counsel. Bill acknowledged my email right away and called me later that day. Frank messed up, he said. We know that. He's an idiot. So what do we do? So his excuses didn't work? Nope. Bill explained that they'd summoned Frank to a boardroom, but his story didn't add up, given all the warnings I'd sent him. Besides, there would have been no reason for him to keep emailing the insurer if he'd told me to sue. Once the file goes to legal counsel, Frank's role was over. The company knew Frank was bullcrapping them. So that's it then, Bill said. We just lost a couple of $1,000,000? It's okay, I said, explaining that when I realized that Frank was going to mess up, I issued a claim against the insurer. Because I'd made Frank send me the proof of loss a while earlier, I had enough information that I could sue to preserve the cause of action. Not a great claim and short on details, but good enough. You sued without instructions? Bill said. Lawyers aren't supposed to sue without instructions because if you do that, you're personally liable for whatever costs the other side incurs. It's a big deal to sue without instructions. Yup, I said. I sued without instructions. I pulled up a copy of the claim and emailed it to him as we spoke. It's a little rough, I said, but we can always amend. Thank God, Bill said. Can I leave it with you? Of course he could. The insurer was a sitting duck and I knew I'd collect from them, no problem. A few days later, I got a call from another guy who worked for the client, a guy I didn't normally deal with. They had a situation and needed my help. I usually deal with Frank, I said. What's up? What was up was that Frank got called into another meeting, and they handed him a one-page letter, and then he put his little office things in a box, and security walked him past his coworkers to the elevator and escorted him downstairs to the parking lot. Bye-bye, Frank. He was too old to get another job, or at least not a decent one. It was a life-changing event for Frank, but for me, he was just an anecdote, a cautionary tale that I tell young lawyers, sometimes over beers, maybe too often, because I'm getting on in years and I have my favorite stories. I wasn't trying to get revenge on Frank, not at all, and I would have felt a bit sorry for him if he hadn't been trying to throw me under the bus, but the guy who replaced him was great and never nickel and dimed me, so it was all good. The next one is a petty revenge story. While I do have a job already, I thought it would be worthwhile to see what else is out there. A week ago, I found a job posting on Indeed. It sounded like a good gig, paid well, and is work that I like doing. The only downfall is that it's a 35-minute drive out of town. I had a good conversation with the business owner, via Indeed inbox, and he seemed like a good guy. I explained that I work every day from 7 a.m. to 3:10 p.m., and he understood that there is a bit of a commute to his shop. He asked me if I could meet up with him at 3:30. I told him that it isn't possible as I was done at 3:10 and can't do a 35-minute drive in under 20 minutes. I explained that I would be leaving town at 3:10 to come and see him, and that I would see him when I get there, somewhere around 3:40-ish. So I gave him my phone number just in case something was to change, and we left on a good note. I drove rather fast, getting there at 3:37, happy that I got there in under 35 minutes. I show up, the business is closed. I figured he was somewhere nearby, so I get out of my vehicle to search. I look over to my left to see two teenagers moving some materials. I approach them and ask them where their boss was, while explaining that I had a meeting with him now. One of them then informs me that he just left a few minutes ago, but could call him back to come meet me. He calls his boss, saying who I am, etc. The teenager chuckles, says, okay, with a, you've got to be kidding me look on his face, and then hangs up. The teenager says to me, he says to go home. I asked him to repeat himself. He said, go home, this time laughing uncomfortably. I now have another 35-minute drive ahead of me and I am very irritated. I decided to leave as his boss instructed, but instead of driving the gravel driveway back onto the highway, the way I came in from, I decided to leave him a present to remember me by, some donut tire skid marks on his front lawn as I tore out of there. 30 minutes after that, he felt the need to reach out to me and introduce himself via private number, but I let it go to voicemail, as I was driving, which upon listening to later on further proved to me that all his negative Google reviews were more than likely all true, and that this person isn't someone to do business with anyway. The next one is a malicious compliance story. I, 33M, often do the cooking at home, including the washing up that happens afterward. My wife, 34F, does not usually cook. We established that by our second date years ago. I love her to bits, but she is a culinary disaster, and time and sweat have failed to make improvements. It is a lost battle. The sequence of dinner prep usually starts as soon as I finish work. This involves chopping meat, vegetables, and rounding up anything that was previously marinated or thawed. This is immediately followed by cooking and then serving to be eaten hot. It seems logical to me that meals should be enjoyed while they are fresh, and cleaning up can wait, especially if the kitchen is not being used by anyone else in the interim. I'm also the one who normally does the washing after everyone has eaten, and I wash all the cutlery and cooking prep stuff in the same process. This is done while my wife settles our toddler into bed. I prefer this setup because I can get all the washing done in one go, and everyone can eat their meals at the same time together while it is fresh. I do not like washing the pans/pots/wok after cooking and before eating. My wife, however, seems to get annoyed at this. Every now and then when I am cooking, if she walks in, she will start complaining, making notes that I should pack this and that up, that I should clean the board while waiting for the stir-fry to finish. Sometimes there is literally no downtime for certain dishes, especially with several to serve before it gets too late for the toddler. To be clear, I certainly clean some things as I go, especially when it concerns raw meat or things that need to go back into the fridge. I'll wipe down if there are any offensive spills. But for things like chopping boards, certain empty packages, or condiments, I will leave them on the countertop until I am done or when I am washing up. Things that I feel don't pose risks or have any urgency to be put away, other than making the kitchen look tidy during cooking. Happy to be proven wrong. Anyway, one day, for whatever reason, my wife got real snarky at me because I left the chopping board out next to the pans, saying it's not hard to clean as I cook. Whatever, fine. So, for the next meal, I made sure to clean everything I touched as I started my meal prep. I had already made sure the little one had her dinner, so there's no harm in drawing this out. Need to open that can of pasta sauce? Better wash down the can opener and dry it before we start. Gotta wipe down the whole kitchen top too. Oops, dropped a garlic clove. I'd better give the whole kitchen floor a good scrub. Is that a bit of charred residue on the stove? Okay, better degrease the entire area, you get my drift. Wife has put the little one to sleep by now, so 3 hours later, the kitchen is sparkling. Literally, pasta has not entered water and the sauce materials have not touched the pan. Wife asks, "Where's dinner?" I tell her I haven't started cooking because I still need to clean the fridge. There were some stains under the tomato tray. She went back to bed. I still cooked and packed her lunch. I've not been harassed since. The next one is an entitled people story. After selling my motorhome and SUV, I had the cash to buy our next car outright, and that's what I intended to do. I go find the car I wanted and go to the dealership to buy it. The test drive is great. The car is great. I'm ready to get the deal done. First, I'm given the final price sheet with a $1,500 warranty I neither asked for nor was asked about. I tell him to take it off. I have to go through his sales pitch and he's fighting me on it. I win. I'm not getting their extra warranty when the car is still under the manufacturer's warranty anyway. Next, he gives me a form to get my details for a credit check. I tell him I'm not financing. He leans back with a big sigh like I'm being difficult. I ignore him. Do you want me to write a check and wait for it to clear to pick up the car, or do I need to get a cashier's check right now before the bank closes? He gets up and leaves. Great, 15 minutes pass. 30 minutes. I'm getting angry. He comes back with a manager and they both try to get me to finance. This is how you build credit. I already have a great credit score. You don't want to tie up this money. He tries to ask me some personal questions to make me scared to spend the money. Do you own a house? Do you have family who relies on you? I'm not playing this game. I have an emergency fund. I just want to buy the car. Personal check or cashier's. They leave. I'm made to wait again. I get this is their sunk cost fallacy scheme. The more time I waste trying to get this done, the more likely I'll be to see it through. But I'm fed up. I get up to leave, and he catches me on the way out. Are we doing this or what? I say. He's apologetic and lures me back to the negotiating room. Then he acts like I just killed his dog and says he lost the warranty money and now he's going to lose the financing money. I like you, I really do. But I've got to feed my kids like everyone else. Can you just work with me? The amount they give us for sales like this isn't even worth my time. It's ridiculous. I literally had to get up to leave again before he would finally take the check. I really should have walked out. Can you imagine being made to feel like an a-hole when you're buying a whole damn car? The next one is an entitled people story. It's been a while since the whole incident with my entitled neighbor Elaine. I've gotten to know 3 of my neighbors so far, and I didn't mention the Elaine incident to them because I felt like it wasn't my place to defame someone. My immediate next-door neighbors, let's call them John and Carol, had a small BBQ and potluck. They invited other neighbors, and I talked to many of them and started to get to know them. Overall, everyone was very friendly. Towards the end of the BBQ, Elaine came around knocking at the backyard gate with a bag of containers. She said she rang the doorbell, but no one answered. Carol went toward the gate, but John told her to sit down and gave an angry look. He asked her if she needed anything. She said she wanted to join the party and that everything smelled really good. John said this party is a potluck and it's nearly over, and almost all the food is finished. Elaine asked why she could not come in anyway. Carol chirped up and asked if she brought anything. Elaine said she didn't, but she's sure there's more than enough. John said it's nearly over, they're cleaning up now, and she should go home. Elaine scowled and tried to open the gate while John firmly held it in place. After a few minutes of that, she went home. I asked Carol what that was all about. Carol said Elaine always invites herself into people's homes with some kind of sob story, or just wanting to be welcomed. She eats everything she can find and takes a lot of stuff home. She goes through the fridge and pantries. Even if you tell her no for something, she gets really upset. Carol says she doesn't want to be rude to Elaine, but with the cost of food and caring for children, it's ridiculous that an adult woman feels entitled to pantry and kitchen raiding on a regular basis. A neighbor named Jane said that Elaine insults people a lot casually, and she also invites herself to couples' date nights. Jane claims Elaine called her home inappropriate and psychotic for being too clean. A neighbor named Mary said Elaine called her 15-year-old daughter anorexic for being thinner than her specifically. The neighbors mostly agreed that Elaine is really loud and rude. She doesn't have the best social skills. Most of the neighbors don't talk to her or avoid her. Elaine also never lets anyone into her home. She says it's because of COVID. She doesn't ever bring anything to neighborhood events or anyone's homes, and constantly complains about being poor, even though she owns her home. It's usually the husbands that have to be stern and tell her to get out and never come back when Elaine throws her tantrums. I think the husbands are tired of subsidizing her life. The husbands all complained that Elaine really tries hard to talk about her bisexuality with them and cozies up to them. I didn't share my experience with the neighbors for now, but maybe one day I will. I don't feel bad for her. I just feel that she should be kinder to people and not treat them like they exist for her convenience. She isn't entitled to other people's things. She isn't poor. She isn't struggling. Maybe we should have a conversation with her husband. What kind of person shows up to other people's homes with containers? Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.